listening to AchieveRadio.com. A new drummer for a new awakening.
Welcome everybody, live with Dr. Carolyn Dean here on AchieveRadio.com this Monday, June 4th, glorious day in the world. Happy to be alive. Happy that you're with us. We're back after a two-week hiatus, which I must selfishly say was all about me and my marriage and my honeymoon. But we're back now, and we are so thrilled to be our first Monday in June and to have our Doctor series going. And, of course, you guys know and our regular listeners know that in January we introduced that new feature to our radio show, the Doctor to Doctor series. And we've had just the most fun people on. I think all of our regular listeners agree. And today is going to be no exception. We are so blessed to have Dr. ROBY Mitchell with us. And he is just such a... There aren't even enough words. There isn't an introduction to explain how fascinating this gentleman is and his huge wealth of knowledge about natural medicine and about nutritional medicine, different protocols, what he's done with his life, and his willingness, just like Dr. Dean, to be his own laboratory experiment, his own lab rat, just like Carolyn, imposing all these things all of himself and then solving them for himself and for others and sharing his goodness through the world. So we're going to first of all say aloha, much aloha to Dr. Dean. Hello, Carolyn.
Hey, Jenny. Welcome to Maui. Jenny's here in Maui with me, just so everybody can be jealous. And yes, ROBY, you've been invited too, so it's your fault that you're not here. But continue on, Jenny.
And hello, ROBY. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'll get there as soon as I can.
Okay, hon. And here's how I will describe ROBY. When I first met ROBY, and I can't even remember where it was, seriously, it's like we're brothers from different mothers, you know, that saying. Of course, maybe we're siblings, but that's how close I feel to ROBY. We share a brain. We share the same enthusiasm for what we do. So I'm not going to go on too much. Jenny's going to give more of an introduction about ROBY and what he's done, and we're going to get right to it.
Okay. So listen, I'm going to read his bio, just little pieces and snippets, because you guys are going to be fascinated, first of all, to know he did graduate with honors from Texas Tech University of Medicine in Lubbock. And then when he was at Texas Tech, he was selected to be the first medical student in an exchange program with the Jinan University Medical School in mainland China. So here he goes off to China. So this is his first exposure to alternative therapies, and oh my gosh, can you even imagine you guys being immersed in the world of medicine and Chinese medicine in China? Amazing. Then he studied intensive care and emergency medicine at the University of Alberta, Canada, and he was also awarded a fellowship in cardiovascular pharmacology and did his Ph.D. work under the world-renowned physiologist PKT Pang. So he's got such a wide variety of experience. But here's where the story gets interesting. He became an ER physician, Lord, and you know what that means. He got hypertension and arthritis. It stressed him out, and his body just went crazy. And so he started, of course, to take the prescriptions, and then, of course, what happened? He had the terrible side effects, and then what else happened? Of course, he had to dive in deeper and revisit the philosophies that he had learned in China about biochemical rebalancing with diets and supplements, and he was able to improve both conditions. And he's just launched off from there. So welcome, welcome. What am I missing, and what is the most recent thing that you've been up to, Dr. Mitchell?
Well, I guess the most recent thing that I've done is collaborate with Carrie Rivera. She is a mom whose son developed autism, and she was just not going to settle for the response that she got from doctors that this was just something that this child was going to have to live with. So she started doing investigative work and just trying everything, and finally came up with the use of a remedy that I had actually tried with my prostate cancer, which is the chlorine dioxide, and had such good results with that. And then she then went on to complement that with other therapies and help a lot of kids. And I found out about her just serendipitously through an article that was just making her out to be the devil. And by the way that the wording was phrased, I have been through this enough myself to know that when somebody is using those ad hominems against you like that, you must be doing something right. So I tracked her down, and we have collaborated on, I had some therapies that I had used in autism myself, so we've collaborated, put our programs together, and are really just knocking it out of the park with autism now.
Oh, wow. Okay, so that's awesome. But I missed your answer blipped out right when you said the substance that was creating all the success. What is the substance? Can you say it slowly, maybe spell it for our listeners so they can kind of tune in to what you're saying?
Chlorine dioxide is also known as MMS, or miracle mineral solution. This guy, Dr. I can't remember his name, and he's not even a doctor, but he developed the clinical use for it and started, curing malaria and a lot of things with people over there in Africa, and I think it's been used with AIDS also. But it's a systemic antimicrobial that is safe and very effective. And for autism, which through my studies I found out those behavioral symptoms are a manifestation of inflammation in a particular part of the brain called the amygdala. And so it's a matter of being able to get an antimicrobial that crosses the blood-brain barrier, gets into the amygdala, and gets rid of the infection, and then the immune system stops the inflammation, and then there's no more autism.
Wow. And do you I don't know, Carolyn, how do you react to that? You're the doctor. It generates a million questions to me about the inflammatory state and all kinds of other things. What do you think, Carolyn?
Well, of course, Ginny, I've tried it. Ginny says I try everything. Yeah, MMS, chlorine dioxide. I actually ruined my taste for coconut milk by putting it in the coconut milk when I was taking it. It's been used worldwide. And it does just what Roby says. But, Roby, tell me, how do you get the kids to take it? Because it does taste like chlorine.
Right. Yeah, and that's the problem that I was having. So I was using, things like the black seed oil and some other things, which for a child on the spectrum, it's just almost impossible to get them to take anything, that has any kind of taste or texture obscenity to it. And so what she did with this is just, she is what I have started to label a mommy-trition. So these mothers, that just find a way to get their kids healthy in spite of what the doctors do. So she creates this highly diluted formula. So it's like one drop in so much water, and then with that solution, you start like with an eighth of a drop, and then just titrate it up, and as they get better, then this obstinance, for things gets less, and you can, start putting other things in. And, she has just worked it out. Just phenomenal. You listen to her and you think that she has a Ph.D. in physiology, but she was just a mom.
Oh, I know, and I've come across moms like that. That it's like every fiber of their body is so focused on helping their kid, they'll become Ph.D.s in their kid, and those are the folks that really are helping their autistic kids. So yeah, that's fantastic. And actually, what we've used, we do have a few supplements, but it's been very helpful for the ADHD kids and the autistic kids to have our Magnesium lotion rubbed over their little bodies. So I'll probably get in touch with Kara and tell her about that, because it's got to be external stuff or real diluted stuff that the kids will take.
Right.
And you're exactly right. As they get better, as people get better with their conditions, and they're able to tolerate more things.
Yes, yeah, and it's I really did not. I had no clue. Now, like when you and I were in medical school, autism was not on, even if you were doing a residency in pediatrics, you had no courses on autism. It just didn't exist.
Mm.
And so I didn't really become aware of this as an issue until some of the daughters of the mothers that I treated for hormone replacement therapy, they started having children, right? So these grandchildren of the women that I had treated for bioidentical hormone replacement, it was their children, that were popping up with autism. And that's when I really started to investigate, the why behind it, and really thought for a long time that it was some congenital brain damage that that was just irreparable, once it happened in utero. But just following some of these moms, they got on it, started changing the diets and so forth, and they saw improvements with the diet. And once I saw that there was improvement with the diet, that made me think, well, there's got to be an inflammatory component. And I started going through the literature, and I found where they were doing these brain mapping studies, right? And they were looking at the brains of these autistic kids, and what kept lighting up was the amygdala. And so, that was just the light came on, and I know how to treat inflammation. So that's when I started adding my things, and then found Carrie. And she is in Germany and had been working there in Latin America. And this problem of autism, it is worldwide, it's epidemic, and it continues to grow. And, it is just really heartbreaking to hear some of these stories.
Yeah, right.
I have
Ginny, let me just jump in, because I don't want to lose this point. Roby and I also bonded on the treatment of yeast overgrowth and fungus. So that plays a huge role in the whole autistic spectrum.
And,
so
and
tell us about that.
No one has gone into the brain, of course, and biopsied these and said for sure that it's a candida overgrowth, but that's what I believe it is. It's some microbe, and it happens when these women are not producing enough hydrochloric acid because they're low thyroid when they're pregnant, and nobody is diagnosing that. But some critter is overgrowing in the brain, and certainly the things that we use to kill candida, right, is working in this particular case. So. Yeah, that's how we met, Carolyn. I tracked you down when I saw your name on that book, right, The Yeast Connection and the Woman's, right? I hunted you down.
Oh, right. Okay. Now I remember. Yeah, Bob didn't remind me where we first met. That's
and
right.
Then we did a seminar. And then we got together in Toronto and did a seminar in Toronto. That's where we initially first met, was in Toronto.
Yeah. And then you invited me to Amarillo to some of your seminars that you put on, and I remember us booting around Dallas, and was it Dallas or Houston?
Dallas. It was Dallas.
Dallas, and we'd drop in on people and say, hey, can we stay with you? We were like, you're the typical vagabond, and I just sort of followed along, Yeah, I really enjoy being with Roby, as you can tell. Ginny, you had a question.
Yeah, I guess I just so it's interesting because you're talking about yeast overgrowth and being a real factor in autism, but so many people think that autism comes from vaccinations, and I don't understand how an antimicrobial would be effective in treating that. But I'm not a doctor. I'm just a little layperson out here. So what is that going on there?
So the connection with the vaccines is not that the vaccines cause autism. It's that they open they would be like opening the door or opening the window in Texas during the summer and letting the flies in, right? So what vaccines do, and it'll tell you this on the package inserts, is that they compromise immune system function. And one of the ways that they do that is by the addition of mercury, which we know is an immunotoxic chemical. It compromises the function of two critical parts of the immune system, your T cells and your macrophages. These are like your Army and Marine soldiers, that are normally doing hand-to-hand combat with the microbes, right? So mercury compromises the ability of those to function. So when that happens, then these microbes that are just always there. What we have found out, in the last 10 years or so with this Human Genome Project is that we're not sterile like we thought we were. We thought that as long as you didn't have an infection, right, that the human body was relatively sterile. It is 180 degrees from that. At your healthiest, even bacteria, you have 10 times more bacteria in and on you than normal cells, right? And then there's viruses and fungi. We are just saturated with these critters all the time. Now, we have these mechanisms that keep the numbers under control, right? So producing hydrochloric acid, thyroid hormone keeping your body at a 98.6 degrees, the production of hydrochloric acid, if I didn't say that, of course, your immune system and our skin and cilia and the hair and so forth. So we all have all these mechanisms. If there's a compromise in those mechanisms, right, then those critters that are already there, right, again, can overgrow, right? The flies are always out there in Texas in the summer, and if you just open your door, they will come in, right? And so what the vaccines do, particularly with the load of vaccines that are given now, I think it's like 60 or so, they compromise the function of the immune system. And so that allows whatever critters are, again, already there, it allows them to overgrow. And depending on your genetics, they will overgrow one place or another. Now, once they overgrow, then the immune function that you do have left will kick in and cause the inflammatory response. And depending on where that happens, then you'll have a clinical manifestation of something that we'll call a disease. Now, doctors will call it different diseases depending on where the inflammatory response is. So if it's an inflammatory response from yeast overgrowth in your lungs, they'll call it asthma. If it's on the skin, it may be psoriasis or eczema. If it's in your joints, they will call it rheumatoid arthritis, or there's irritable bowel syndrome and ulcerative colitis, and just a whole litany of things. But it's all the same mechanism, overgrowth of a critter, and then your immune system responds to it.
Right. And mercury itself, Roby would know this, of course, is a very strong antibiotic. It's killing off stuff and leaving that imbalance. So, and there's aluminum in the vaccines, too, that also compromise the immune system. Yeah, it's what we call it here, Roby, is total body meltdown, because what you're saying about the thyroid, all these organs, they try to support the compromised position. So the adrenals get weakened, the thyroid gets overused, the sex hormones, you have women with their very early menopause, and we're working on all that. I mean, what my focus, Roby, is all about dealing with yeast overgrowth and then replacing minerals, especially magnesium. And what I found when I worked with the thyroid and all the people with the Hashimoto's, et cetera, is there are 9 minerals that the thyroid requires, and people aren't getting them. We think about iodine if we think outside the box at all, but there are 8 more. And what I've done, and I'm kind of giving you what I've been up to because we haven't talked in a long time, is I've got multiple mineral as well as my Remag magnesium. And what this chemist I work with has been able to do is stabilize these minerals in ionic form so that they're absorbed into the cells. They're not always combining with some and making some compound that means it's not absorbed at the cellular level. So it's been amazing watching people get off their thyroid medications, either synthetic or Armour, thyroid, etc., because they're able to make their own hormones now. And that's one of the things what Roby said was if your thyroid is low, your temperature is low, and that sets up an environment for the growth of these anaerobic bacteria and the yeast and fungus. So it's a vicious cycle, but we can simplify it. When you identify these things and you deal with these things, the body can perk up. It's not a lost cause, right, Roby?
Yes, no, for sure. Well, I had the high blood pressure, diabetes, high cholesterol, and then ended up with prostate cancer, right, all those things, and never took a drug for any of them, reversed all of them with natural things. But I'm glad you bring up that point about the minerals, and we'll definitely have to get together, you and I and Carrie, and talk about it, because that's one piece. Another piece that we need of the puzzle that we still need to insert in, right, is a very good mineral solution.
Perfect. Well, come to Maui and we'll talk.
Okay. On the beach.
On the beach. Ginny, let's get to the questions.
Okay, yes, she's, well, let me just say also, too, on the whole thing that you were just talking about, what about the magnesium connection, too, Carolyn? Because we've got the minerals, but there's a distinction with magnesium, too, right?
Well, I mean, what's interesting about magnesium, I'm reading Jason Fung's book on diabetes, the diabetes cure, I guess it's called. He's an awesome guy up in Canada, Roby. Do you know him? Just Jason Fung? Yeah, he's big on keto and intermittent fasting. He's a nephrologist who just got so annoyed that all his kidney patients were diabetics, obese, and they all just kept dying. And nobody was looking at the cause of diabetes, which is eating carbohydrates. Stop the carbohydrates. So he jumped on to the keto intermittent fasting, and he's having excellent results. And what I just read today, he said diabetes is the only disease that kind of rots out, R-O-T-S, out all the organs because they're just saturated with sugars. And he said it's the only disease that affects the whole body. But what I say is that magnesium, because it's needed in 700 to 800 different enzymatic systems in the body, it affects every tissue, every organ, every system in the body. If you have magnesium deficiency, you have head-to-toe disease. Of course, the FDA won't let us say that because they say you can't cure a disease with a nutrient, but you can if it's a nutrient deficiency. So anyway, what we say about magnesium is you have to have it in saturation doses in order to get all those systems working, the detox systems, the Krebs cycle. In 6 of the 8 steps of the Krebs cycle, you need magnesium. So, why go bother with all these expensive things to prop up the Krebs cycle when you don't have saturation of magnesium? So that's what Ginny's alluding to here is the incredible results we have when we just start people on our REMAG. Right, Ginny?
Yes, that was it. Thank you, Carolyn. Yep, that's perfect. Okay, so here's what happened. We put your information out, Dr. Mitchell, and a lot of people responded, and they typed in questions to us. So we want to get to the questions and give you a chance to interact with our audience. Are you up for that?
Sure.
Okay, wonderful. If you want to talk to Dr. Mitchell, 602-666-6027 is the number to call. And usually what happens is we'll tag team, and Carolyn will pop in and say some things, and Dr. Mitchell will pop in and say some things. And then we'll take these questions, and you'll get a chance to interact if you call in again. 602-666-6027. And also we've got a mailbag full of questions, so let's get to those. And a lot of the questions in general were about high blood pressure and then the specifics of that. So let me read you 1 or 2 so you can kind of get the zing of it. The first one is from Linda. She types in, I went to the ER with irregular heartbeats about 2 years ago. They found I had low potassium, high blood pressure, and hypothyroidism. Since then, I'm on levothyroxine. Gosh, I've been off for 2 weeks. And 3 blood pressure prescriptions, Lord. I had been on BP medicine after I had a baby at age 39 and now 62. I try to get more potassium in my diet, but it's difficult to get 4,700 milligrams a day. I started to take magnesium supplements. My blood pressure is still high when I go to the doctor. What is the correlation between magnesium, potassium in relation to blood pressure? I would like to increase my water consumption as well. Thank you.
All right, so I had high blood pressure also, and one of the first things I found out physiologically was the link between magnesium, potassium, and blood pressure. So that was one of the first things that I started doing, was just replacing the magnesium and then eating foods that were higher in potassium. But then I found out about the hydrochloric acid connection. So every time we eat, your body should produce enough magnesium to make your stomach 3 million times more acidic than your arterial pH, right? So very, very acidic. What that acidity does, a couple of things. One is it keeps yeast and other microbes from overgrowing, but then it also creates this, it ionizes magnesium, potassium, all these other minerals, vitamins, amino acids, and so forth, so that we are able to absorb them, right? It creates this ionic disparity, right, that makes these substances, travel out of your gut and into your bloodstream. So, but the creation of that level of acidity, it takes a lot of energy. So this is where the thyroid hormone comes in. So thyroid hormone it acts very much like the spark plugs in your car. So the energy equation, regardless of whether it's your car or your barbecue pit or fireplace, is you have to have a fuel, and you have to have oxygen, and then you have to have something that creates a spark. Of course, in your fireplace, wood is the fuel, and we have oxygen, and then you put a lighter in there, right, and you create a fire that then produces energy. In our bodies, glucose is the fuel, and then we breathe oxygen, and then T3, or the thyroid hormone, T3, is what creates the spark. So as thyroid levels go down, then you're not able to produce as much energy and heat. And so if you're not able to produce as much energy, you're not able to produce as much hydrochloric acid. If you're not able to produce as much hydrochloric acid, then you're not able to absorb as much magnesium and potassium and these other minerals and so forth. And so that domino, right, then goes on into a lot of these other things. So you have to replace that hydrochloric acid. You have to get where thyroid function is where it should be, right, whether you're doing that with the what we call NDTs, or natural desiccated thyroid, or supporting your thyroid so that it does what it's supposed to do on its own, like Carolyn is doing with the minerals. But you have to get the body where it is back in that state of what we call homeostasis, right? Able to keep its pH and temperature and everything, heartbeat and that type of thing where it's supposed to be. The palpitations, the blood pressure, all of that is linked to the mineral deficiencies, right, that are caused by not producing enough hydrochloric acid.
Excellent.
Wow.
I don't have. Oh yeah, that's Roby. There he is. He laid it all out.
There he is. Wow.
Let's move on.
Yes, but let me make a correlation here. Then Carolyn, because we also have another question that came in from a gal who was asking about her situation, and that was that she was on a PPI, a proton pump inhibitor, and her blood pressure started to go up, and she didn't know what she could do about that. So what is that the correlation with the hydrochloric acid then? You've got an acid suppressor, so you're suppressing your hydrochloric acid through PPI, and then that's in turn affecting all these other systems?
Oh my God, yes, yeah, and those PPIs have turned into such a nightmare. I mean, the long-term consequences of those, because when you further inhibit that production of hydrochloric acid, then you set in an environment that's then conducive, again, to these critters that are already there, like Clostridium is one of these gram-negative bacteria, a nasty one, that's always in your colon, right? But you keep it under control by producing that hydrochloric acid. When you start giving those PPIs, then these patients, they get infected with or an overgrowth of the Clostridium. They start to get more Alzheimer's. I mean, just a slew of things. That is a very, very, very bad thing to do, is to interrupt that production of the hydrochloric acid. That is just such a key component in the way that we keep all of these billions of critters under control.
Right. Here's a story I have for you, Roby. A guy I wrote about, he and his wife gave the testimonial. Dana is his name. He had to be on intravenous magnesium because he was a magnesium waster. And he wondered if REMAG could help him. And right at the time he decided to take REMAG, his indwelling catheter finally got infected for the fourth time, so he had to have it taken out. So he had to rely on REMAG. And the REMAG actually kept his blood magnesium level higher than the intravenous. And in taking his history, he was on a PPI, and I said, you have to get off it. Now, they just got in touch with me a while back and said finally a doctor agreed to help him wean off the PPI, and his magnesium levels went to normal. He didn't have to keep pumping them up. This PPI was killing him, and nobody really dealt with it. And she said, I know you told us 2.5, 3 years ago to get off the PPI, but we had no idea that a doctor-prescribed medicine was harming him that much. And that's what's going on with these PPIs, and people just don't know it. You go to a doctor, and you think they're there to help you. And unfortunately, they seem to be there just to dispense medications. And it's more than horrifying. I mean, that's why both Roby and I got out of medicine, or were kicked out of medicine, because we just couldn't put up with it anymore. But anyway, that's my little story about PPIs.
Yeah.
Wow.
Ginny,
wow.
I'll go back to you, Ginny. What do you got?
Okay, so now here's a flip on the other side. Let's talk about the next most common thing that people take, which is antidepressants. So obviously our society is completely and totally stressed out to the max, because we've got all the aggravated gut issues that people are taking PPIs for, not realizing and then we've got antidepressants. So this writer, Roby, says, I'm on an antidepressant, generic Prozac, at 40 milligrams a day, and now my blood pressure is starting to increase from a borderline to a moderate. It's now 170/95. And I'm wondering what I can do to bring that down. I am not on any other medications. I'm 60 years old, postmenopausal female. I did try Wellbutrin and found that my blood pressure was even higher, so I stopped taking that one.
Yeah, and this is another case, where that magnesium, is basically the Swiss Army knife of minerals. For the blood pressure, we know that magnesium dilates blood vessels and helps bring blood pressure down. That's one of the first things that I turn to or point people to for high blood pressure. But then also, and Carolyn can chime in on this better than I can, but magnesium is a very powerful antidepressant, right? We're always, or many times, able to get people off of an antidepressant simply by replacing magnesium. And then further than that, as I talked about the low levels of hydrochloric acid production, like leading to those low levels of magnesium, then that also, hydrochloric acid allows you to absorb these amino acids that are building blocks for neurotransmitters. So if you're not absorbing those amino acids for the same reason you're not absorbing the magnesium because of a deficiency in hydrochloric acid, then that many times causes these mood disorders, not just because of the deficiency of the neurotransmitters, but also what the psychiatric literature is starting to show now is the same thing with autism, same thing with Alzheimer's. These mood disorders, depression, manic depression, bipolar, even schizophrenia, when they do the brain scans, what they find is that there's inflammation. So again, you have this build up to a tipping point of these microbes, and then the immune system responds with the inflammation, and then we have these clinical presentations that the doctors cover up with Prozac or PPIs or whatever.
Right. So you're saying in the gut, oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
No, you go ahead.
I was just saying, so in the gut, that's where serotonin is mostly produced, right? So you're saying now you've got a complication. Is that the neurotransmitter kind of thing you're talking about that makes people feel good, and now they can't get it because their gut's out of balance?
Yes. Yeah, so there's serotonin, but there's also even more extreme than that, the building blocks for serotonin, right? You're not able to absorb them, right? I mean, it's very similar. I mean, one of the critical things, that lets us know that hydrochloric acid levels are low is a deficiency in B12. And I've seen this myself where these elderly people have come into the emergency room or presented to their family doctor with these neuropsychiatric symptoms, and they get diagnosed with Alzheimer's or some type of dementia, and they're simply low in B12, right? So, I mean, it's a big domino to fall for you not to be producing enough hydrochloric acid and then not absorbing magnesium and potassium and these amino acids and so forth. But, yes, that's it, not being able to absorb the building blocks for then your brain to make these neurotransmitters, and then that is compounded by this inflammatory process that happens in the brain, right? And it's a reversible condition. So many times by doing some basic things, right, putting back the magnesium, changing your diet, right, that Carolyn and I talk about to not include the very high glycemic foods that feed the yeast, right, and the yeast overgrowth, and then causes the inflammation, and some of those things. But all of these, I tell people, anything you weren't born with, you don't have to keep.
Look at this. I just looked up what vitamins increase serotonin levels. Vitamin B1, thiamine, B2, riboflavin, B6, pyridoxine, vitamin D, folic acid, selenium, calcium, magnesium are all needed to make serotonin. And what do we do, Ginny? And Roby, you may not know this, one of our capsule or only capsule product is Realign. It's got all the methylated Bs. If they're not methylated, they're food-based, and we throw in our methionine to precursor glutathione and our sulfur-based taurine. So that's how we get around this whole B vitamin deficiency that is so huge in our environment. Now, the other thing that jumped in my mind, we're talking about Prozac. Do you know my whole theory about the drugs that have fluoride ions and molecules or whatever? Prozac has 3 fluoride ions or atoms. Fluoride in the gut, these fluoride drugs in the gut will be broken down by gut bacteria and release the fluoride. And fluoride irreversibly binds magnesium. And that's where the Cipro drug, the fluoride Cipro drug, they talk about it causing Achilles tendon rupture. I think what happens is magnesium deficient people, you get a lot of athletes, they'll get sick, they'll be given Cipro, and then they'll start getting tendon rupture. They're so deficient in magnesium, the rest of their magnesium gets bound up with these fluorides, and then they start getting muscle spasms to the point of tendon rupture. And that's what I'm seeing with so many of these drugs now, the fluoride drugs. And they give, as a pharmacologist, you can see what's going on there. And I don't even get feedback about it. You know, people don't even talk about this. But what I'm sure they'll say is, well, we put these drugs in a test tube and the fluoride doesn't break off. But they don't take into account what the gut is doing and what the detoxification in the liver does to these drugs. It tries to mangle them to get rid of them. So, yeah, you're going to have fluoride being released. Correct?
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's the job of the kidney, is to break all that stuff down and either recycle it or send it to the kidneys or the lungs to be gotten rid of. And, of course, fluoride is part of this family of halogens, right, that has chlorine and bromine and iodine and so forth. And the chemical makeup of our thyroid hormone uses iodine. But if you're putting fluoride in there or chlorine or bromine, then your body can get confused, and it will use one of those ions, right, to make your thyroid molecule, and it will be ineffective. So that's an interesting piece of information that I didn't know about, the fluoride molecule being in the in Prozac.
Roby, you look at the list. I'll send you one of my PowerPoints. We've got Flonase, anything with an F. We've got Lipitor is a fluoride drug. It's all the very common drugs. They wanted to make them stronger, or strong in the sense that they wanted to get through the fatty membranes, so they put fluoride on to allow them to become more fat soluble. It was a huge, shift in pharmacology about 15, 20 years ago.
Now that is so interesting, right, that you said that thing with Lipitor, which I've done a lot of study on these statins, which they basically are analogs. They copied those from lovastatin, which is a chemical made by red yeast rice, and you have to ask yourself, why is a plant making red yeast rice? The plants don't have high cholesterol. They don't have cholesterol at all, right? But the plant is making that because it's an antifungal, right? And what they did was chemically make these statins so that they mimic that function of lovastatin in killing yeast. And that's why those drugs work. It's not because they go through the enzymatic thing of breaking down cholesterol. It's because they kill candida is why they work. But what they have found out of late is that those drugs increase diabetes and your risk for getting diabetes. And I couldn't figure out how that happened. But now that you say that they have the fluoride in there, it makes complete sense. Because if they have the fluoride, then that's going to replace the iodine on the thyroid hormone, make the thyroid hormone ineffective, and low thyroid is what causes type 2 diabetes.
Look at that, folks. Look at me and Roby.
This is like
save the world.
Like
we're the bomb.
Yeah, it's like listening to a jazz session with players just riffing off each other like Clapton and J.J. Cale or something. It's amazing. Okay, so let's do this, a couple more questions, and but that's awesome. That's so perfect the way this is coming together. This question, Carolyn, is from Ashley and Roby, and bless Ashley's heart. She has she's emailed customer service, emailed Facebook, email. Now she's here on the chat line. She's anxious to get a response, and I know she doesn't feel good. So here's what's going on with Ashley. Hi, I'm Ashley. I'm 35. For 8 months, I felt awful. Okay. I have been on antibiotics off and on for 5 months. I had sinus surgery, and then 3 weeks later, I had dental surgery, and I felt worse. I only found out after many tests, MRIs, and blood work, all they found was a low vitamin D score. I took high doses of vitamin D, and now I feel even worse. I did research online and found Dr. Dean. I started to take magnesium glycinate, and in a week, the pressure, headaches, and dizziness were gone, and also some of my tingling went away. But the second week, I went up to 800 milligrams of magnesium and woke up with adrenaline pumping and heart pounding. Am I going too fast? My RBC magnesium is 5.3. I lowered my dose to 300 magnesium, but now the tingles are coming back. What can you recommend for me?
Roby, if I could dive in Let me just set the stage here about the vitamin D business, and you've probably come across it. Vitamin D requires magnesium in umpteen steps. And so when you take high-dose vitamin D, you really use up your magnesium. Some of our magnesium-deficient people can go in the sun and get too much sunshine vitamin D and start experiencing magnesium deficiency. So I won't let people take more than 1,000 to 2,000 a day, as long as they're also taking our REMAG. And the RBC magnesium business, serum magnesium doesn't help us at all. It's always going to look good to keep the heart, sufficient with magnesium. So I go to the RBC magnesium test. It's not really accurate enough because there are no mitochondria in the RBC red blood cells, and it's the mitochondria that hold the magnesium that allows us to measure it in cells. So the range of magnesium RBC is now 3.8 to, I think, 6.5. So I tell people, since 80% of the population is deficient in magnesium, at least try to be up around 6 in your RBC level. So that's sort of the way I come at those two problems. But if you can remember the question, Roby, go ahead. I forget it.
Yeah, so, it often takes a comprehensive repopulation of these vitamins, minerals, nutrients, hormones, and so forth. But when somebody says that they're getting recurrent, particularly sinus infections, those are fungal overgrowths are at the root of that. And the Mayo Clinic published a really good study on that back in '99. Those ear, nose, and throat doctors were given antibiotics repeatedly. People would get better, right? And then the infection would come back, give them another round of antibiotics, and the infection comes back. And somebody scratched their head and said, well, maybe we're not dealing with bacteria. They started culturing the sinus cavities and found out that these were fungal overgrowths. They started giving them antifungals, and the things cleared up. I took it a little step further and asked, well, why are they growing fungus? And again, it's because of not producing enough hydrochloric acid, and that is most likely one of the problems that this lady is having. And the way that she can find that out is to do a simple CBC. That's just a routine blood test that your family practice doctor can do. But one of the indices on that CBC is called an MCV, which stands for mean corpuscular volume. That tells you how big your red blood cells are. If you're not producing enough hydrochloric acid, then you won't absorb B12. If you're not absorbing B12, then rheostatically, just gradually, those RBCs will start, red blood cells will start to get bigger, 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 bigger. That MCV should be around 85. If it's up to 90, then that means that you're not absorbing enough B12, and most likely because you're not producing enough hydrochloric acid. Not producing enough hydrochloric acid also allows that fungus to keep regrowing, right? Now you can, on top of that, it compromises the immune system. So this is another thing, that compromises the immune system, that Candida produces what are called gliotoxins, and they also target macrophages and T cells, again, and weakening the immune system. So then that bacteria that's always there then will overgrow. The doctor gives you an antibiotic, right? It gets rid of the bacteria, but the fungus is still there producing the gliotoxins. Immune system's still weak. Those bacteria will overgrow again. You go back and get another antibiotic, right? And then it starts killing off your good bacteria in your gut, and you just start spiraling downward. Carolyn and I both, as we would talk to these people when they would come in with these clinical problems, once you start to go back in their history so many times, you will find that everything started when they started getting antibiotics for acne, back when they were a teenager, or antibiotics, for a bladder infection. So it's a downward spiral that happens. So you have to replace that hydrochloric acid in order to stop, again, to get things back into homeostasis.
Yes, okay, now I want to dive in and ask about hydrochloric acid, Ginny. Are you telling people to take HCl with their meals, and What's the best one? Because I've never been able to get people to do it right. And I know Jonathan Wright is big on that. Go ahead, Roby.
Right, and of course, that's who I got it from, right? The nutritional guru who literally wrote the book on nutritional medicine, and I was out there, with him for 2 years and really got to see firsthand, what happens when we replace this hydrochloric acid. But I went on to develop one, it's a product called ROBY enzyme, but it has the hydrochloric acid and then also the digestive enzymes. And so, people, they take those with meals. I take it myself, actually, also. Take it with meals, and then that brings back down the level of these, the candida and these other microbes, and allows you to absorb all these other, the magnesium and potassium and amino acids and so forth. So that's a big factor that will work hand in hand, like with the magnesium replacement.
Good. Thank you.
Okay, because we know that one thing, Roby, that I want to make sure that we tell our audience, again, for new listeners like Ashley, is one thing about the REMAG is because of its picometer size, it does not use digestive energy from the body. Any compromise in the gut that exists right now is not a factor for absorbing our REMAG, and the same thing with REMITE. So that's one of the reasons why we think our products have such an incredible accelerating response for people, because they don't require digestion. They're picometer in size. They immediately drop into the ion channels of the cells, and Carolyn has long suspected that they also get straight into mitochondria because, again, of their size, and also they're concentrated to 60,000 parts per million. And what that means is you're like taking a bowling ball and concentrating it to a gumball. So the level of concentration combined with the size is just a double combination, triple winner zinger that just makes the stuff go straight in and work right away. But also, with magnesium being required to make hydrochloric acid in the gut, because it is required for that, you're adding your other factors into it, and I think that would be an extraordinary combination, don't you, Carolyn?
Yeah, we'll have to talk to Roby about his ROBY enzyme.
Right. Yeah, so that description of the magnesium, particularly, in these clinical situations, like this prime suspect is this lady that you're just mentioning, she needs something like what you're talking about, the character of that magnesium that you're talking about, to springboard into help right away, right, to get that magnesium right in there like you're giving it by an IV. So that sounds like it would be really dovetail well with these people that are really sick,
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then let's see, we just have a few more minutes before the top of the hour, and I want to see what other Carolyn questions you have, Carolyn, and then we'll wrap up with other things that might be coming from our chat line.
Right. No, let's go to chat. I've been fortunate to be able to interrupt along the way and get in there. So let's go to chat.
Okay, very good. Okay, so Barbara types in, my 1-year-old grandson is being given fluoride drops prescribed by his pediatrician. I am so horrified. His parents insist on following the doctor's orders. I rub REMAG lotion on him whenever I can. Is there anything else I can do?
What are the drops for?
Okay, very good question.
They might be giving them for the teeth, but if it's oral, I would divorce your family and take your grandson. That's what I would do.
Did I hear you right? She was saying that she's giving them eye drops?
Fluoride drops.
Oh, fluoride. Oh my goodness!
Yeah,
well,
sorry.
I mean that's, you just got to stop that. That's no good. Yeah, you just got to stop. So for the reasons that Carolyn talked about, and then the reasons that I talked about, right? So those fluorine molecules, that's poison. So it's poison to your thyroid function, and then it's poison in that the magnesium pathways there also. So yeah, you just got to stop that.
Yeah, what I'll do, Ginny, I'll look up one of the fluoride activist groups, Fluoride Action Network. That's the place. Fluoride Action Network. Go there, print off everything they've got. They've got 52 studies showing how fluoride will kill your IQ. If they want a stupid son, then they'll just keep the fluoride drops. If they don't want a stupid son, they'll stop the fluoride drops, for Pete's sakes.
All right, excellent, Barbara. That's great ammunition for you. Good luck with that. We'll keep our fingers crossed on your behalf. And Ashley heard your presentation, you guys, about her situation and wanted to know if she has adrenal fatigue, will magnesium affect that? And can she go up too fast in her magnesium intake?
Oh, yeah, I mean, Roby and I, we would agree. The magnesium is going to support the adrenals, and again, that's why we would say the Remag liquid or the lotion to go as slow as possible. We have people who are so sensitive and chronically ill, and it's almost like their bodies reject anything because they're afraid of either a detox reaction. The body detoxes as soon as you put magnesium in. So just like Roby was saying about MMS, start really dilute, then you go slow. I mean, I think this was the person who jumped from 400 milligrams or 300 to 600, and we don't do that. And with the Remag, with being a liquid, you can go a lot slower in your progression. And like I said, you can have yourself detoxing too much. Actually, go and read my blog, When Magnesium Makes Me Worse. I have a list of 14 things that can kind of get stirred up when you start magnesium because it's going to open up so many pathways.
Okay, we're coming to the top of the hour. Roby, this was fantastic, and I'm sure we would love to have you back. Carolyn, your final thoughts on the hour, and Roby, any closing comments you have?
Roby, you have to come to Maui, period.
Well, I look forward to it. I'll be there. And I would just say,
Okay.
I mean, this has been as educational for me, right? I'm sure as it has been for some of our listeners. So this has opened up some dialogue for Carolyn and I to discuss. I'm particularly excited about the mineral formula, for these autistic children that we're working with.
Oh, excellent. Yep, that's my brother there talking. He knows when he's heard a good thing, and same here. I'm happy to learn more about the MMS and maybe get back into that. So thank you very much, Roby. I really appreciate you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, everybody. We'll be back with Hour 2 of the show. Thank you again, Dr. Mitchell, for joining us this first hour. Live with Dr. Carolyn Dean here on Achieve Radio. We'll be right back.
We'll be back with Hour 2 of Live with Dr. Carolyn Dean, along with host Ginny Gunther, after this brief station break.
Yeah.
You can also get updates and resources online by visiting drcarolyndean.com.
Psychic radio, holistic radio, spiritual radio. This is AchieveRadio.com. Follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/achieveradio.
You can climb floors and then worlds show up. You can go downstairs and worlds disappear. You can go downstairs up on the rooftop and you open the door and take a step and you go, I'm on the rooftop. Wait a minute, I better pay attention. So that becomes a fun thing. So that's why we have to come back and say this, relax and allow, soften it up, get your foot off the gas, don't slam on the brakes, just let it coast where you want it to go. Soften, be easy about all this, and stop making a great big huge thing out of great big nothingnesses, because the nothingnesses are serving you very well. You like this blissful place of not caring, because now you care so much about everything that you've got yourself in a position where you don't really care about anything. Good. It's wonderful. Thank you. We are happily, easily ready for more
AchieveRadio.com.
Here we go now. Go to the Carolyn. Here we go now. Here we go now. The wellness scene with Dr. D. Here we go now. Here we go now. Go to the Carolyn. The wellness with Dr. D.
Hello, welcome everybody. Hour 2 live with Dr. Dean here on AchieveRadio.com. So glad you're with us. And wasn't that first hour just spectacular? And of course, as per usual, Dr. Dean dragging, bringing, having, showcasing, giving an opportunity for such great people to share their information and insights with you. And I'm sure that we will continue to develop the content that Roby brought out, and we'll just keep going and we'll keep sharing updates with you. And speaking of updates, Carolyn, welcome back, hour 2. How are you?
Oh, I'm good. It was so awesome to hang out with Roby. And we didn't mention them. We had another corresponding association. He's a Marine. And, of course, he's not an ex-Marine. They're once a Marine, always a Marine. So I used to tease him that, yeah, I was a Girl Guide. In Canada, the Girl Scouts are Girl Guides. I said, I know what you're talking about. So we would laugh about that. He was a Marine and I was a Girl Guide. And I think he went to med school on the GI Bill. And it was awesome for him to get back after he did whatever over there and then get his training and education. And he did his MD and his Ph.D. pharmacology together. The guy is brilliant, and he's humble, and he just wants to keep learning. You could all tell that. He's pretty awesome.
Yeah, lovely man. And also, Carolyn, what about, I've already had 3 people email me about the product that he talked about, and I think, unfortunately, it is on back order. So, you guys,
I noticed that. Yeah.
Do not panic. Just hang in there, and we'll see if we can get some for you. But I'm sure it'll be fine, and it'll be back in stock supposedly, middle of June. I say supposedly, not because I doubt, but of course because I doubt. Because we always get the update of when things are going to happen, and then I just always factor in an increase of 10%. Okay, so listen, you guys, that was fantastic, and also we have been together this last couple of days, and Carolyn has been working on some super fantastic bubble plastic things for you guys too. So we've got great new stuff happening, but we don't want to talk about it in full details yet until we get more details nailed down. But just really exciting times and super wonderful things happening, and I hope everybody is as optimistic about their health and the solutions that we are offering as we are, because we see time and again that even when someone has a great protocol they're using, like, for example, our wonderful friend, mother nutritionist who's working with the autism thing, and they're using the MMS fine, or like Dr. Jason Fung, who's working with type 2 diabetes, and they're using the keto diet. Do you hear every single one of our guests say consistently they don't have the magnesium puzzle piece in their equation? And this is the thing that Carolyn is constantly pointing out, is that you've got to get your magnesium situated, and then we'll figure out what else is wrong with your body. But there are so many tentacles of what magnesium deficiency does that until you get to magnesium saturation, you really may not have an accurate diagnosis. Is that what you've been saying, Carolyn?
Yeah, absolutely. That's it. You may be experiencing signs and symptoms of magnesium deficiency that are misdiagnosed. I have a list of 65 of them in the Magnesium Miracle book, and it's something that the FDA doesn't really want me to talk about, but I'm just reporting. So, yeah, that's why magnesium saturation is important, and I know we'll get with Roby and talk about this and get his people on the right kind of magnesium so that they can have even more impact.
Yes, and just incredible. So really seriously, do not forsake your own formulas in the beginning of whatever is exciting and inspiring to you about what other people also have to share. Please just remember, you've got to hang on to your Remag and your Remite, your Realign. I mean, these are the non-negotiables, got to have them. And it just is, again, more validation every single time you hear somebody come on to the program and talk about things like how important magnesium is for hydrochloric acid and how that's being compromised in so many people, to be able to get that restored properly. So the other thing, Carolyn, we have a question left over from the first hour, and then we can take some phone calls. 602-666-6027 is the number to call to talk to Dr. Dean tonight, and then we can go to our other mailbag and other things that we want to do. But the question that was left over from the first hour was this one. Hello, 2 years ago I started taking an OTC, that's over-the-counter drug, Zyrtec, Z-Y-R-T-E-C.
Let me go from here, Ginny. Let me go from here because I want to describe everything as we go along, and I do see the email. Thank you.
Oh, okay, very good. Okay.
This is an allergy drug, over-the-counter, Zyrtec. And what it is, it's not a fluoride drug, but I just looked it up, and it's a chlorine drug. And this is something I'm going to talk to Roby about. Is this Zyrtec doing what the fluoride drugs do, releasing this chlorine molecule and affecting a person? And it's likely it is. If you look up on Wiki, Zyrtec, it's got a chloride molecule or atom attached to it. And what if that is breaking down, jamming up receptor sites? I don't know if it binds with magnesium. It probably does, and creates a magnesium chloride and all the rest of it. It's kind of speculation. But when this person says to us, after taking this Zyrtec, she had almost immediate chest pain, thinking she was having a heart attack. It subsided after 30 to 40 minutes. She saw a cardiologist and had an angiogram. Everything was clear, no plaque. She was diagnosed with something called Prinzmetal's angina. It's just something that, let me see, they talk about it occurring at a certain time of day. I have it in my book. Let me quote myself from my book. Prinzmetal's, they don't usually even bring that up. And I don't even know if I'm pronouncing it properly. Hang on, everybody. It was so not talked about in medical school. I don't even know how to spell it, and I'm losing my place here in my notes. I apologize. Okay, hopefully it's spelled properly. I sound like Bob when Bob's doing something on the computer. No, I can't even find it. Shoot. Okay. Another type of angina is called Prinzmetal's, which is angina that occurs at rest rather than following some sort of physical stress. Dr. Pierce, Ph.D., believes he identified the cause, which occurs most commonly at two specific times in the day, early morning and late afternoon, coincidentally when magnesium levels are at their lowest. Dr. Pierce estimates that up to 50% of sudden heart attacks may be due to magnesium deficiency. He has found that magnesium works better than nitroglycerin for his own stress-induced chest pains. So this is what I've quoted from my Magnesium Miracle 2017. So it's equated with magnesium deficiency, but they diagnosed this our writer with this type of angina, gave her a beta blocker, which she refused. She says, I'm not a serious athlete, which Prince-Meadows angina is most common in, but I continue to have painful angina. No doctor seems to want to approach the fact that I was fine until starting to take Zyrtec. Hopefully she stopped it. I had never taken it before then. My magnesium, she says, is 2.4 milligrams per deciliter, which is a serum test, so that doesn't really give me any information. I mean, she says, do you have any suggestions? And, of course, it is to start slowly on the Remag and build it up, because it is correlated in the literature with magnesium deficiency. So you start by working with your magnesium, increase your fluid intake, put sea salt in your water. If you feel there are other magnesium mineral deficiencies, take the Remite as well. But you can get the book Magnesium Miracle and read up more about it. So yeah, that was a very good question. I've never answered a question about Prince-Meadows angina. Over to you, Ginny.
Okay, wonderful. Excellent. Thank you. All right, everybody, 602-666-6027 is the number to call to talk to Dr. Dean right now. We've got somebody holding out in the great state of Colorado. Carolyn, are you ready to take some phone calls?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. All right, area code 303, you're on the line with Dr. Dean. If you could give us your name and then state your question or comment.
Hello, lovely ladies. This is Michael in Boulder.
Hi, Michael. Did you hear Roby's interview, Michael?
I did not. I have to go back and listen to it. I was with a client and just got on at the very last minute. So
no problem.
I heard MMS mentioned, so if anything I ask or say is redundant, just let me know.
Okay. Okay, go ahead. What do you have for us today?
Yeah, since I've been taking the Remag, there's been times when, I noticed right away my head cleared and my brain felt a little brighter, if you will. And some things felt a little easier in the body, and I have been living on chlorine dioxide, MMS, for 3 years. It's basically keeping me alive because my pathogen load is so high. So, when the Remag kicked in and I started feeling a little bit better, it's like, oh, I don't need to take the MMS. And then I go a couple days, and then it just comes on and kicks my butt. And I have to I just had a major reminder in the middle of the night last night that I had to take massive amounts to get back on top of. And I'm on the yeast protocol, so it's not just the yeast problem. There's definitely a bacterial parasite something else in there. And I've never been able to get up to the levels that most people are able to with MMS because the detox is so hard. I get hammered. I've had my whole body I've had my body go into shakes, really serious shaking for hours before things settle down. And I think my kidneys are just getting freaked out with the load, from the pathogens dying. And it's happened with other things too. I've seen it happen with taking too much iodine in the past. I've seen it happen there's even been times when I've taken Remag in the middle of the night and my whole body freaked out. And that hasn't happened.
Well, I don't know enough at all about MMS. I tried it and I thought it tasted so yucky I wouldn't be able to talk people into doing it. But let's see, do you think maybe you should have a consult or something with the Kira, the woman who's using it? I mean, where do you think you should go with this?
Well, I'm in a lot of double binds in my life, so I finally made a call to Dr. Holt.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I'm doing a consult with him in an hour and a half tonight.
Oh, nice.
So that's good.
Yeah.
But I'm just, I guess what I'm looking for help with is if you have any other direction for me around, I guess there's two pieces. Are there other things I should look at for parasites, that kind of thing, with the knowledge that my body seems to get overwhelmed really easily? So, I was really hoping, and I haven't given up hope yet, that the reason my body's had so much trouble is I've been so dang magnesium dependent or deficient my entire life that, I'm just not breaking things down. And once I got my mercury fillings out, I developed sensitivity to all the sulfur foods, and I know how important sulfur is for the, so it's like, wow, I can't eat broccoli and onions and garlic, but my body desperately needs them, and there's a number of ways in which I'm in these double binds, and even in my personal emotional life. So that's, I'm looking.
Well, Michael, let me jump in here. And I'm sure you've looked into it. Hulda Clark's Zappers. Hulda Clark, she's the parasite lady, and I don't know if that. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I did a little bit, and it's funny. It just came up again about a month ago, and I almost bought another one because I heard of somebody using one in a way I hadn't used it before. They just kept it on 24/7 for a month, and I'd never done that before. You just strap it in a little thing you strap on your arm or leg. So.
Okay.
But yeah, I was thinking about that again.
Yeah. See, I don't get into cancer or parasites because I figure over the phone and on the internet, it's just too involving. So with parasites, I look at diatomaceous earth, I look at Hulda Clark, and I try to get people to find someone who will look at fresh stool samples because I don't think you can get a good diagnosis unless someone is actually looking at the little critters. So it is a gap in my my sort of information, but that's now with the MMS. I'm wondering if you could email us a question that we could send on to ROBY and see if what do people do if they can't go up on their MMS. So those are the three things I would suggest to you right now.
Well, let me add one other piece. Is one of the things, I'm guessing it's parasites, but I'm not sure, it started about 4 years ago where it felt like I was getting a little crepitus in my shoulder, and then it kind of spread across my shoulder blade into the middle of my back, and then there was some times where I took MMS, and it would get better for a few hours or something. And it's like, so am I killing parasites in my muscles? Am I killing them in my gut, and that's stopping all their poisons from coming into my system? But the bummer thing that's happened is it's kept progressing, and now it's like totally into my arms. It feels like all my muscles are like crumpled up cellophane, and they literally make snapping noises now sometimes. So,
well, again, what I would say is to write that out, and we'll pass it along and see if someone like yourself who's been on MMS for 3 years, if ROBY or Akira know anything about this. That's all I can suggest right now to try to pull in some other experts on it. Okay, Michael?
Sure. But I mean, part of the question to you basically is, besides REMAG and REMITE, and I just started the RNA drops, is there anything in your world that will help open up, anything else besides that will help open up detox channels, so that I'm letting this stuff out?
Well, was the Realign out of the picture because of methylation, or what's going on with Realign?
Well, it was possibly because of the methionine. I was wondering if I was reacting to that or not, but it's, my whole situation is so complicated. It's like, well, Am I reacting to that, or am I reacting to something else?
I know. It's very, yeah, and I appreciate the fact that you're still, plugging away, and you're just trying to stay on top of it, and we'll do what we can to help. But I would think that working with the Realign, even if you just use a few grains of it and build up, because it's got all those building blocks that you need for detoxification.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And what about, I'm sure you've used silver before. We just recently decided that we could do a really good, stabilized ionic silver. And actually, personally, after coming back from Ginny's wedding, I decided to put the Pico Silver to a test, because I developed a bit of a post-travel cold, sore throat and scratching. I thought, oh, no. So that day, I took 6 teaspoons of Pico Silver solution throughout the day. The next morning, I was normal, and I have never been able to do that with other silvers or anything else. So, yeah. So, silver is important. I used to think, and on the label, we don't say people should take it every day, and I used to think, well, if you're not infected, you're not infected. But the way Roby was talking today and reading about Lyme disease and everything, and knowing from my AIDS and chronic fatigue work in New York, we all have these organisms, and I think it probably is a good idea to keep after them. I'm not going to do Pico Silver daily. I might do 2 teaspoons a day for a week every month, personally. But, I'd like you to think about the Pico Silver, because I know that with the stabilized ionic aspect of what we've put together with our chemist, I think it's quite superior to any other silver.
Okay. All right. Well, one last thing I want to end on a positive note. On Saturday, we went to a gathering with friends, and I had a period of about 3 hours maybe where my brain felt clear. It was really high energy in my brain, and I wasn't thinking about my body, and I was really excited. So even though the last couple of days have been crap, it's like, okay, I've got a window of this is possible. Yeah. So thank you.
The windows. Yeah, the windows are so important, and I'm glad you mentioned it, and that you'll focus on the fact that you can have those windows, and you can keep working to make them longer and longer windows. So that's awesome, Michael. Thank you.
Yeah.
Say hi to Dr. Holt for us, okay?
Okay, we'll do. All right,
thank great.
You.
Thanks, Michael. Bye-bye.
Okay, excellent. Live with Dr. Carolyn Dean here on AchieveRadio.com. Great show today, Carolyn. We're just clicking along. I want to put the call again out. If you have a question or comment for Dr. Dean, 602-666-6027 is the phone number to call, and we'll get you on the line with Dr. Dean today, and you can have your chitty chat with her. Otherwise, Carolyn, I think we're all caught up on the chat line. And do you have mailbag?
Of course. Now, there's some leftover questions for Roby, so let's go there. Someone said they are asking for a book or reliable online resource re possible side effects of the many vitamins and supplements this person takes. She needs this recommendation. Not at a beginner's level. She's been a student of all this since the 60s and Adele Davis's books. So what I say to this question is, seriously, I've been looking at all the supplements for 50 years, and I think that the blog I did, Dr. Dean Supplement Recommendations, is really all you need. I don't spend a lot of time putting down other supplements. We've done that periodically on the radio show. But rather than look for side effects of vitamins and supplements, just look at what the body needs and use either our recommendations or our products for your vitamin and mineral needs. So that's my answer there. Here's a question for Roby. Oh gosh, we've done most of them.
No, we got all those questions done. It was just the one that was left over. Yeah.
Right. Good. So then the next thing that I have lined up here is, Ginny, we have missed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, talking about 9 or 10 different blogs. Can you believe it?
Oh, so, my goodness gracious.
I know. We'll never. I know. So I'll read them off. You'll find them at drcarolyndean.com, and they're great. I mean, they're good information. I get a lot of good feedback on them. And the title of the one that was furthest away, 40% of dementia diagnoses are wrong. And if you think about what Roby said today about Alzheimer's, that if he can get people on a good diet and magnesium and some supplements, then lo and behold, their brain wakes up and normalizes. And it's true in our experience here at customer service. The next one is called recycling amphetamines, and now it's crazy what they're doing with amphetamines. I think I remember talking about it on Bob's What Youth radio show, about how these young people now, and young adults I would say, are getting prescribed Adderall. And this Adderall is amphetamine. It's a speed, but it doesn't have the name speed. But here I have said in this blog, 75% of ADHD kids are on Ritalin or Adderall. The profit-driven drug industry is targeting a whole new market. It's the old strategy of create the disease and offer the cure. Young adults are being told that their fatigue, anxiety, depression, aches, and pains, which are all magnesium deficiency, and these symptoms they're having as a result of their poor lifestyle, and they can be fixed with a drug. So if you lack focus, have trouble concentrating, don't get enough sleep, drink too much alcohol, eat junk food all day, don't bother changing any of your bad habits, just take Adderall. And a quote in Business Insider that I found 2013 from an article titled, "These are the ridiculous ads Big Pharma used to convince everyone that they had ADHD." You've heard of adult ADHD. Well, it's just a ruse to sell Adderall. So look up a 2018 documentary about adults on Adderall, and you can find the URL at drcarolyndean.com under this blog. It's a scary eye-opener on our brave new world. Even though doctors told parents that most children will grow out of their ADHD, there are adults who've been using ADHD meds since their school days. And there's also another group of new users who don't want to be left out. So it's young people who think that, well, I can't keep up with the guy next door in the booth at work. I'll take some Adderall, or I'll take some Adderall to study for my exams, or I'll just take some Adderall because everyone else is taking it. And what can they do to you? Increase your heart rate and give you a regular heartbeat, tremors, shaking, twitching, rapid breathing, aggressive behavior, stomach cramping, hallucinations. So, yeah, it's a real problem. Kids have been drugged since birth, and they think it's normal. Another article, blog, The Pendulum Swings on Vitamin D, so more studies showing that actually vitamin D isn't that great. So it's just, they'll hype something and then crash it down, and it just has people giving up, throwing up their hands and saying, I can't even deal with this anymore. And we are the answer to that because we just say, look, here's a handful of supplements that do work. Just take them and go on with your wonderful life. And then I wrote an article or blog called Benzo Scripts on the Rise and benzodiazepines. I mean, people are addicted to this stuff, yet more and more people are taking benzodiazepines. We know they're addictive. We know that they're only supposed to be used short term, which used to be 2 weeks, and now people are taking them for years and then having a great deal of trouble trying to get off them. And I mean, it's obvious to me that something that's addictive, that everybody says is addictive, you shouldn't even start. Next blog, telomeres crave magnesium. So telomeres are the little frayed ends of your genes that magnesium unfrays, or it stoppers them up and prevents a lot of the signs of aging. That's why Ginny and I say we're going to live forever. Another one, magnesium instead of NSAIDs, the non-steroidal anti-inflammatories.
Carolyn.
Yes.
Carolyn. Let me just say something real quick about the telomeres.
Yeah.
Everybody, you guys, these telomere supplements are such a joke. They've got these special anti-aging telomere supplements or whatever that are like hundreds and thousands of dollars. And it's so to provide this support for these, it's just not even necessary. It's a scam. The other thing we want to do is just remind everybody, Carolyn, about chromosome 14 and the RNA drops, that the telomeres are found on chromosome 14, and that is a target for the RNA drops. And I thought, Carolyn, you were going to say that this is one of the reasons why Ginny and I look so young, because I've been with Carolyn for the last week, and I swear you guys, she looks like a teenager. So listen, you're in good hands on the telomeres and the anti-aging thing if you've got your drops and your Remag. Okay, that's all I wanted to say.
Perfect. With the magnesium instead of non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, someone had a back and forth email with me. Well, are you saying I can deal with my severe arthritic pain and rah with just magnesium? That's just not possible. And I'm not saying that. I'm saying if only doctors would wake up to the fact that magnesium is an anti-inflammatory, do all the things Roby and I talk about, they wouldn't end up having severe arthritis and need to take these drugs. So although we've seen ankylosing spondylitis turn around with our whole protocol, not just magnesium, I'm not suggesting that people ever stop their medications and just take our Remag and expect it to act like a drug to suppress symptoms. What we're talking about is a protocol where you slowly build up your body's resources while you're still taking your drugs. You can take them together. It doesn't matter. But then there will be a point in time where your body is feeling better and you don't need the drugs, and taking the drugs actually makes you feel a bit worse. The FDA doesn't like me saying that because we're not supposed to supplant supplements in place of drugs, but what we're doing is helping a magnesium mineral deficiency picture so that the drugs that have been given for mineral deficiencies aren't working anymore because it's a mineral deficiency. It's not a drug deficiency. The next blog, Screen More Diabetics, Give More Drugs. And just like they did with cholesterol by making the level of, quote, normal cholesterol lower so they could give more statin drugs, just like they did with blood pressure, they made the normal blood pressure lower. They made the high blood pressure lower so that people would think they needed to take blood pressure drugs. Doing the same with diabetes. They're saying your blood sugar or your hemoglobin A1C. You have to start treating for diabetes before you get full-blown, of course, diabetes, but they're saying to do it with drugs. And so all these three chronic diseases that I harp about all the time, blood pressure, cholesterol, and diabetes, and in my rants, I will say to a person, you know how this scenario starts? You go to your doctor, you're stressed out, you're given a blood pressure medication because your blood pressure is slightly elevated and it's been a bit elevated before. That's white coat syndrome usually. You're given a blood pressure diuretic usually, which drains out more magnesium. The stress that you're under is probably due to magnesium deficiency. You come back a month later, your blood pressure's worse. The doctor says, oh, we caught you just in time. Let's give you a calcium channel blocker and an ACE inhibitor. You're on 3 drugs for your blood pressure. 2 or 3 months later, when they do the blood test to make sure your liver isn't copping out under all these drugs, they find out, oh, look, your cholesterol is elevated. Oh, my goodness, your blood sugar is elevated. And they say, oh, we caught those in time. No, they created those with the drugs draining your magnesium. So now you're on 5 or 6 drugs for blood pressure, cholesterol, and blood sugar. And doctors keep batting away at these diseases with drugs that don't work, and they won't look anywhere else. And it's killing people. So that was screen more diabetics, give more drugs. And the last one, genetic testing for depression drugs. And this is what they're doing. They know the drugs for depression aren't working, so they're saying, okay, well, we'll test your genes and we'll find the drug that's going to work for you. And what Larry in Florida sent me, he said, you've hit solid gold. As one among millions who struggle daily through an avalanche of health management data, much of which is overwhelming, confusing, and contradictory, you have managed to present the key to unlocking the mystery of mental illness in 5 short lines of print. And Larry does it, he continues on, but he said, let me find out the 5 short lines of print, because at the end I just said what a person could do instead of starting with drugs. So let me just find those words. Bob wanted those words too, because Bob loves posting testimonials on his Facebook page. And you can imagine what they start with, magnesium, right? Oh, gosh. Yeah, that, I don't see it up yet. So let me just Google it on my computer. And at the bottom I say, okay. I say that genetic testing is a bomb right this minute because it effectively closes the door on alternatives like magnesium saturation, avoidance of sugar, gluten, and dairy, high-fat diet to support cell membranes, probiotics and yeast detox, since 90% of our serotonin is produced in the gut, methylated B vitamins, and vitamin C complex. All of these measures should be first-line treatments for depression before resorting to drugs. So, and that covers what we're about. With our yeast protocol, we're telling you to avoid sugar, gluten, and dairy. We're supporting a keto diet as a very healthy diet. In our Realign, we have the methylated Bs. We do advise a vitamin C complex, a whole food vitamin C complex, and certainly magnesium saturation, and I could say the Remite minerals as well to support the thyroid and your other organs. So that's what Larry said is brilliant about my approach to antidepressants. So you see what the pharmaceutical industry is doing. They're avoiding going anywhere but with drugs. the drugs haven't worked, so they're saying, well, let's just give more drugs or do it in a little different way and make people feel better. Now, what someone did email to me is, it is a big deal if you're the person that benefits from this genetic testing. Now, what the testing shows, and here's the quote that this person says, only 15% of patients benefited from genetic testing for the best drug. Not a big win as far as I can see. So this person says, it is a big deal if you're the person that benefits and get your life back by lifting you out of depression. But that's not the point I'm making. The point I'm making is if 100 people are given this test, 100 people are going to be put on these drugs, and only 15 are going to benefit. My point is everybody should be put on the 5 measures that we're mentioning, the magnesium, the minerals, the diet, the high-fat diet, probiotics, and methylated Bs. All of them should be put on that, and all of them will probably improve. If people don't improve, then go ahead and do the genetic testing, but don't do it on everybody who may be suffering nutrient deficiencies that's causing their brain to hurt. That's my point. Right, Ginny?
Yes, and it is the point. Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's the best solution. It's absolutely the best solution. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So anything on your end, or will I continue along?
Continue along. I don't see any waving hands. I asked for phone calls. If anybody wants to talk to Dr. Dean, you've got to hit *5 on your keypad to raise your hand, and I'll put you on the line with her. Otherwise, your phone stays on mute. So I see a lot of people on the phone, but I don't know if they're wanting to talk to you, Carolyn. If they're aware that they've got to hit the *5 and take their hand and raise their hand in the studio. But everybody seems to be very thrilled with just sitting back and listening tonight. So let's press on.
Okay. Now, what comes to us often is people who will say, what nutrients do I take? And I've already mentioned go to the Dr. Dean supplement recommendations. But it struck me that this is what could be happening. I think there's an overuse of antioxidants. So here's what I wrote for customer service. Quite commonly, if a person is taking the complement formulas, Remag, Remite, Recalcio, Realign, and Restructure, and RNA drops, their need for a long list of nutrients diminishes greatly. In fact, taking a lot of unnecessary supplements gives mixed messages to the body and diverts it from just using the right building blocks as found in the complement formulas to take care of itself. When people come to us on a dozen supplements and still aren't well, it's obvious that those supplements aren't working, so why keep taking them? The unnecessary supplements that I see people take are mostly antioxidants like alpha-lipoic acid, CoQ10, resveratrol, carotenoids, and astaxanthin. Oxidation gets a bad rap, especially when it's compared to a nail rusting when exposed to oxygen. We don't like to think of our body getting rusty. We are told that the stress of oxidation leads to heart disease, cancer, and aging. This half-truth led to an overuse of antioxidants to try and decrease those diseases, which just seem to be increasing regardless. The diseases are increasing. What about the fact that oxidation is a natural body function, and what about the benefits of oxidation? White blood cells use oxidation to destroy microbes and abnormal cells, which are pretty important functions. Can the overuse of antioxidants interrupt these functions? I think they can, and I urge caution, and it's why I stick with magnesium, which is an antioxidant as well as a necessary cofactor in 700 to 800 enzyme processes in the body. And I would add to that there seems to be a point, like at the 4 to 6 month stage of using the complement formulas, that people will sometimes say, well, you know, I was feeling okay, and now I'm not feeling quite right. Now, what we used to do and still do is ask people, well, are you still on your medications? And sometimes they are, and we'll say, well, check with your doctor to see if you still require them if you're treating your deficiency symptoms. But now I'm also saying, do you really need all these other supplements that you're taking? Because a lot of people take supplements just as, quote, insurance. And what if that insurance is actually detrimental? So that's where I'm at in how I'm advising people about taking kind of non-essential nutrients. And remember what I said. If you've been taking them for years and you're taking them as insurance, you came to us still feeling yucky, now you're taking the complete meal formulas and you start feeling good, and now you're feeling a bit yucky. Well, maybe it's those extra drugs and nutrients that you don't require. So it's just something that I keep learning as I'm going along with people, and this is something that I just have to share with folks because it just makes so much sense. Okay, here's a question about somebody's mom using REMAG for 6 months. She takes about 1.5 teaspoons per day. One of the improvements she noticed is that her quality of sleep has improved significantly. Before REMAG, she couldn't sleep well, woke up frequently. She now sleeps like a baby the whole day, and that's a good thing. But the thing that bothers her a little bit is she's now sleepy all the time, even during the day. She needs to sleep through the day or have a nap in the day, even though she slept the whole night. And this guy says, what's the deal? Thank you. Answer, well, the deal can be several-fold, but all easily remedied. 1, perhaps not enough magnesium is being taken. Magnesium is necessary in 6 of the 8 steps of the Krebs cycle that make the body's energy. So the 450 milligrams your mom is getting a day may not be enough to give her the daytime energy she needs. Even though a lot of people look at magnesium as a treatment for insomnia and view it as we have been trained to look at drugs, it's doing a lot more in the body. It is responsible for the biochemical functioning of 700 to 800 enzyme systems in the body. It can take 1 to 2 years to saturate the body with all the magnesium a person needs. So I personally would be increasing the REMAG to 3 teaspoons. 2, subclinical viruses and yeast are being treated by the immune system that has become activated by REMAG. This immune system activity can produce toxins and might need to be supported by our Pico Silver solution. Dosage for mild conditions is about 2 teaspoons per day. If there's a good reason to suspect yeast overgrowth, we ask people to fill out our yeast questionnaire, and if the numbers are high, do our yeast detox protocol. So what I'm saying here, Jenny, is that if you've got all these infections and the REMAG is starting to support your immune system to treat them, then the magnesium is being diverted to that activity, and you will need more REMAG and possibly the Pico Silver solution. 3, toxins are being eliminated by the action of REMAG on liver detoxification pathways. We encourage people to optimize that activity by adding our Realign product, which has methylated and food-based Bs that support liver detox, and the sulfur-based amino acids that support liver detox and are the precursors to glutathione. So again, the body is working, it's starting to rev up, and it just needs more magnesium and the support of Realign. 4, magnesium deficiency does not happen on its own. Other minerals may be deficient and required. When the thyroid hormones are low or weak, a person can feel tired and sleepy. That's why we encourage our customers to drink sea salted water and take our multiple mineral Remite, which has 12 minerals, 9 of which support the thyroid production. So isn't that? I think that's a great answer. And then the son emailed in the answers to our Tier 2 questions, and we found out that his mom is is likely overweight, 160 pounds. She's 75 years old. She's been using Remag only for 6 months, so that's not long enough. And she was doing vitamin D3, and of course I said to make sure it's no more than 1,000 to 2,000 units. And she listed a number of different supplements, and that's where I said taking too many different supplements can distract the body from its own biochemical processes. And then I found out she's on a number of medications and has type 2 diabetes, which I said, well, there's a magnesium deficiency, atherosclerosis, magnesium deficiency, stenosis of her carotid arteries, magnesium deficiency, calcification of her spine, magnesium deficiency, heel spur, magnesium deficiency, diabetic polyneuropathy and angiopathy, magnesium deficiency, cataracts, magnesium deficiency. So all the above are caused by or worsened by magnesium deficiency and require much more than 1.5 teaspoons per day. And then we come to the 4 medications she's on. 6 medications. So lots of reasons where this mom can get a heck of a lot better by taking all the complement formulas, and she's already had great results with her sleep with this minimal amount of Remag. So, very cool. Jenny, back to you. We have 8 minutes. What do you want to do with them?
Well, I think, today was just such a great show. I'm really, really happy with all the information. Let's talk about the upcoming webinar.
Oh, right. Oh, yeah. Awesome. Yes, we do. We didn't have a webinar the past couple of months. We were just so busy having parties for Ginny's wedding. So we'll resume on Thursday, June the 21st, and we're going to do a webinar on the immune system and detoxification. We'll find a good title for it, but we have our Realign that now has all the methylated Bs and food-based Bs, as well as we kept in the taurine and glutathione. And we have our Pico Silver that a lot of people have questions about. On our label for the Pico Silver, we said, you can go ahead and Google about silver and find out about it, because the FDA won't let us tell you that it's been used as a natural antibiotic forever. And so we have to dance around that. So people have a lot of questions. So we'll try to dance around the answers in a very straightforward way in this webinar. I'm really looking forward to it. So it's going to be very important, because no matter how much we support people's immune system, there are always going to be organisms out there. So we do have to have some natural and very focused immune system support to offer. And as I said, with my experience, I realized that the silvers I'd been taking in the past really did not do what I wanted them to do. And 6 teaspoons and 12 hours later, I had gotten rid of a cold. And I often jokingly say that I can't believe, with all that we know about medicine and alternative medicine, that we can't even deal with the common cold. And then the other thing that's happening is I'm continuing to take 2 teaspoons a day, is I'm sure my mucus has really cut back. I don't clear my throat, but I get nasal mucus, and I don't even use Kleenex, because I'd just go through boxes and boxes of them. But I used to find I was always kind of blowing my nose with my rolls of toilet paper just to sort of clear the mucus. and I know I don't sound sinusy, it's not so much on my sinuses, but I am sure that I always have some yeast growing. It's always kind of irritating my mucous nasal membranes, and I'm always producing mucus. So that has greatly diminished, so I'm very excited about that. So like Ginny says, I'm always experimenting on myself, and I do things, she doesn't say this, but I say I do things very selfishly for myself, and then I share them with all my friends and family and customers. So that's what we're going to be talking about, is my nasal mucous membranes on June 21st.
Very good. And it's an exciting topic, isn't it, ladies and gentlemen? No, but it is be great because, you know, as we're talking about, Carolyn, and you said, you know, the common cold, but honestly, I don't think the common cold is common anymore. These superbugs, our history, you know, we were talking about just the fact that our food is totally and permanently, irreparably destroyed with all these GMOs and everything. And having these important sources of nutrition that are well made or impeccably made, as is our stuff is, and knowing how to use them properly is going to be the key to sustaining life on this planet and our lives individually, which is why Carolyn and I do believe we are going to live forever, because biologically we will be accurate and able to do so. I mean, there are a lot of people who are going to not be able to do that because they're going to wear their body down and impede on them with all these drugs and also not having good nutrition at all.
Yeah, and that could be a topic for another webinar, because I don't think folks understand when we say food is no longer your friend. I've said many times that the young people who are getting into vegan diets and green diets and just extreme diets that just are based on supposedly good food, good greens, good plants, they cannot sustain the body anymore because the soil is so deficient. Nobody has bothered to replace the minerals in the soil, and we're feeling those deficiencies. So there.
Wow. Yep, I agree. Well, we come to the top of the hour. Extraordinary show, Carolyn. Welcome back. Thank you for being such a sincere and lovely and generous friend to me in the course of my nuptials and honeymoon. It's been amazing being able to do a semi-moon, half work, half play, come over here, be with you, and we'll be going back to North Carolina this week. But gosh, everybody, it's been a great show, and we're happy to be back, and we've got tons of stuff heading down the pike. So stay in and stay tuned with us.
Thank you, Ginny. Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Ginny.
Bye, Bob.
Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas, Ginny.
You've been listening to Live with Dr. Carolyn Dean here on AchieveRadio.com. Till next time, so long, and thanks for all the fish.
AchieveRadio.com. Psychic radio, holistic radio, spiritual radio. This is AchieveRadio.com. Follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/AchieveRadio.
When it's much more simple than that. You have a physical